In this video, we're talking about Switchback, and I'm going to show you exactly how I use this Switchback driver to hook up a set of Nissan GTR headlights. What's up, I'm Chris, and you're at FlyRyde, where I build custom lights and I show you what parts I use, how I install them, and why I use those parts in the first place. So let's talk all about Switchback. I'm going to do this install on a Nissan GTR, but the same method applies for every type of car, so let's dive in. This is going to be the fastest way to run the wires out of the headlight down to the bottom and connect them so that everything is plug and play on the lights when you install them back on the GTR. This is actually a great time to talk about what is Switchback. Switchback is the function of a light where it normally has white LEDs, and when you hit the turn signal, white shuts off, amber starts flashing, and after the amber turn signal is done, white pops back on. White switches back on, so it's a switchback setup. So this is a part from Morimoto. It's called an Xchange Driver. We can just call it a switchback module. All that it's gonna do is have the power and ground for the normal running light come into the front side of it, and then it's also gonna tap into the turn signal. That's gonna go in the front of the module. Out the back of the module, you're gonna have the output that sends power to the white. Now, as soon as it sees that input from the turn signal, it's gonna shut off power to the white and start making the output to amber flash. That's what we're gonna do. Let's look at it. First thing that we're gonna do is take the module out. So we've got our white output. We know it's white because the wire is white. We've got our amber output, which is obvious because the wire is yellow. So we're gonna hook this white one up to the gray wire from the headlight. We're gonna hook the black one up to the green wire. This is all at the connector. Those are OEM colors. This is not gonna be the same for other types of cars. One other thing that we're gonna do is run a wire loom over this to make it look a lot better. And we're gonna heat shrink it at both ends just so we get a professional finish. One trick before you use this kind of a wire loom, because it's mesh, is you wanna tape anything that's gonna catch as it runs through that. So I'm just gonna put a temporary little piece of tape at the end there, and now it's gonna slip right down this mesh wire loom. It's not gonna give me any crap like it would if those little wires were catching and trying to poke out the edges. Now we're gonna cut our heat shrink that's gonna keep the ends very nice and clean. Now we're gonna run that heat shrink into place, and we will heat it up first down here. You wanna be careful if you're using a mesh, because when you're hitting it with heat, the mesh will just melt straight through like nothing. You don't have to be a perfectionist, but you do wanna make sure that that comes to a nice clean section at the end, and then hit it with the heat just like the other side. And now we've got our nice clean wiring coming out the back of the light. One thing to mention, you're gonna wanna make a hole in the cap and then cover it with the same rubber butyl you sealed the headlights with. So starting off, you're gonna have a little cap that looks like this. Now see how there's no holes to let wires come out. All you have to do is just drill a hole, and then you're gonna let the wire come out and mush some rubber butyl on there, hit it with some heat, make sure that it's properly seated all the way around the wire, and then really form that thing into place to make sure it's completely watertight. I actually had some old caps that had really big holes in them. You don't wanna make giant holes here. So I've got my 3 wires that are coming out. I've got the butyl. I'm just gonna heat that up, and I'm gonna mush it down and smooth it and make it actually look nicer and perform a lot better than it will if I just leave it as is, because right now water could definitely get in there. So make sure you take your time, seal these things up. Don't leave any possible way for a little error like this to cause a giant error down the road. I'm gonna show you what our wire colors look like. We have at the far end, we have a green wire and a gray wire. So the green one is gonna be ground, the gray one is gonna be the running light. Underneath this middle wire, coming to this connector, that is gonna power this blue loomed turn signal circuit. So what we're gonna do is just open it up a little bit. What I want to do here is I'm going to tap in to this green wire. So I guess just be careful when you're doing this stuff. I just went to strip it, and it literally just snapped the wire in half, cut right through it, stripped both ends. I'm gonna solder it together, and then I'm gonna actually solder the wire feeding this Xchange Driver. I'm gonna hook it up right here. So let me do that first. I'm gonna cut all these connectors off since I don't need them or want them. And because I've cut that, I'm gonna go ahead and use a piece of heat shrink, which will make it a little bit cleaner anyway, instead of just taping it like I had intended. I'm gonna solder this connection, and then I'm gonna solder the other side, then I'll run the heat shrink tubing. So now I have a nice clean piece of heat shrink covering that connection, completely covering it all up. Now we need our power and ground for the running light. So I don't wanna cut anywhere near the front, because this is where the power is actually coming from. I'm gonna actually come down here. We no longer need the connection on the base of the light. But There's no reason to completely cut it so short that we can't ever work with those things in the future if we decide to give us a little bit of slack. Pull them free, strip the ends, heat shrink, and then solder them to the exchange driver. The wires are very, very soft on these exchange drivers. So you can just strip them with your fingernail. So we're gonna go white to gray and black to green. So quick recap, we have power and ground supplied to the exchange driver. Now we've got turn signal supplying the exchange driver, and these are our outputs on the exchange driver. All right, I wanna mount it right underneath there. 3 wires here, 3 wires there. Now you might want to mount this somewhere else other than where I want to. I don't really care where you mount it. Just mount it somewhere where it'll be safe. All right, last step, I'm going to clean the surface right here and right here with some alcohol. Then I'm going to put double-sided tape on that, put it firmly in place, and this is ready to mount on a car. Get them on the car. All right, so if we played our cards right, all I have to do is plug this guy in right here. Then we're gonna have our power and ground for the running light, as well as our turn signal input. Everything completely wired in, plug and play.
The next day.
It's new morning. We are gonna get working on the GTR again. Right now, I have to put on the Switchback side markers. So as you can see, we got the Switchback headlights done from the last video. We're gonna wrap up the front end right now, get the front bumper back on, make sure everything's working perfect. Then I'm gonna move over to the back end and make another video on that. So this series should be a total of about 4 or 5 videos. So I mounted the headlights just so that I could check to make sure everything worked the way that it should. It worked perfect. And now I'm gonna take them back off. I'm gonna add 1 wire to the turn signal circuit, show you how to do it, and then we're gonna use that to power the side markers. So when we built these headlights, we ran the exchange driver to tap into the green wire that runs from the plug all the way around here. All I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna tap the same wire, except instead of messing with this one from the exchange driver, I'm gonna go ahead and tap the OEM wire that's right here. It's part of this little blue loom section that goes all the way up to the turn signal. We're gonna put the turn signal tap for the side markers right here on the green wire itself. And that'll give us access to it from the back of the light very easily. Now when we run the wires from the side marker, we'll just plug right into that for the signal. I did this install video a while back for an older GTR. This is a 2017. Everything's exactly the same. All we're gonna do is we're gonna take the side marker factory wiring. Instead of messing with the factory plug, we're just gonna access the actual wires inside of it, and then we're gonna tape that driver. It's actually the driver for the 6-inch profile pivot strips. So those are what's inside of the side markers, like the video that I showed you right there. I'm gonna tap into power and ground for the white running light right here from this factory side marker wiring. Then the turn signal wiring we just tapped into on the headlight. So that's the 3 inputs that we need: power for running light, ground, and turn signal input as well. All right, so we have our 2 wires here. We've got the green, which is gonna be the positive, and then the black and white stripe is gonna be our ground. We're just gonna plug in the black wire to the black, the white wire to the green, and then this orange wire is gonna tap into the one on the headlight that's actually the green and black striped wire on the headlight itself. Another thing to make sure that the inside little prong is centered right between the pink insulation on the sides. Sometimes it can get pushed down to one side when it gets crimped, and then it will miss the T-tap when you go to insert it. In this case, we know we're good. And so now what I wanna do is I wanna make this wire be accessible to the side marker, just like this wire used to be. Nice thing is this one's a tiny bit short, this one's a tiny bit too long, so the two things together, if I tape them up and try to make everything nice, it'll keep everything consolidated right here in the corner, and it won't look like a bunch of crazy wiring after I tape it up. Okay, so if you're installing anything that needs to be switchback on a GTR, on the front corner of the car, you're just gonna use those same wires that I used. You can also use the gray and green wire like we did when we did the headlight install, the switchback bolts. Those will supply you power and ground for running lights as well. In this case, since we're doing something for the side marker, it just makes sense to use the wiring for the factory side marker. So we did that, and then we tapped into the turn signal circuit, and that was it. Very simple install. It really complements these stage 1 headlights. Actually, these aren't even stage 1. These are just OEM plus switchback bolts. So I don't even know what to call them. They're just super dope. So they match these side markers perfect, which I no longer make these, but I already taught you how to do it, so you might as well make them and fill that gap in the market. Anyway, I think that's gonna wrap up this install video for the front side markers to match these headlights. I'm gonna make another one now about the rear side markers, so join me on that one as we continue the GTR install series.